Hello friends, please excuse the introduction, or rather lack of one. Hopefully you could just hear the sounds of the forest. It's a little quieter now. It's been quite stormy and the electricity has only just come back. Otherwise I was heading down the path to the beach there to record this talk. As it's not a case of just the light, it's just that it's quite hot and humid here in the kuti with the mosquitoes without the fan. Although I've turned the fan off now, we'll see how it goes. It's been all exciting. No, that's the wrong word. There's been some excitement here in my kuti. One of my gecko family, quite sad really, one of my gecko family about this size, so what about tail to nose, probably 12 inches. I'm not sure what the metric equivalent of 1 foot is. Anyway, one of the females got eaten by a snake. The snake wasn't particularly large, but it wrapped itself around the gecko and squeezed and squeezed and bit and ate it all. When I found it, the gecko was already either paralyzed or dead, and not wanting to interfere with nature, as I don't think one should, I just watched and contemplated nature at its very worst. I don't know whether you remember, maybe when I was a child anyway, I think it was a chap called David Attenborough. On Sundays there used to be this television program of animals and things in Africa, and you'd see these either hyenas or lions or tigers chasing a gazelle or something pretty like that, and eating this poor creature alive. And you know, I'm not sure whether that thing's popular on TV or even in politically correct society these days, something they air before 9 o'clock, I'm not sure. But as a child we grew up on this kind of thing, and a great introduction to the circle of life. I am a great believer in rebirth. Not believer. I understand the principles behind rebirth. And really, as a Buddhist monk, as a Buddhist, it is one of the core aspects of Buddhism that our existence, this life, and what we do doesn't end here, albeit our conscious awareness and understanding as it is, and this personality certainly does die, until we break that cycle of rebirth, then it continues. But we are fortunate in the human realm to be able to come to that understanding, so not belief, understanding, and find where and how we break that cycle. I spoke recently about the 12 links of dependent origination, and in those 12 links you see how we go from simply being ignorant to this, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, then wanting, and then liking or not liking, then becoming attached, and then craving, and then addiction, And this addiction isn't just to things we like now, in the present, in this moment, or things we crave for in the future. It is one of the ties that we call fetters that tie us to samsara, which is the Pali word for this cycle of rebirth, this existence. Now, the poor gecko has a little opportunity in its life to develop this understanding, as does the snake. But they have become, so bhavana, so reborn, become in that realm as a result of causes and conditions, very possibly due to their previous karma in previous lifetimes. But that wasn't what I was going to talk about at all. I just wanted to explain or share with you this experience of just seeing in nature the Dharma that surrounds us everywhere. You might just see a little ant struggling up a wall, or a moth flickering around a light. And rather than just, oh, it's another moth or another ant, if you take a little time to observe, not think, not analyze, not try and understand, just watch nature, we come to see that it's nature that is the Dharma. And another one of many translations for this word Dharma is nature. The nature of existence, the nature of the universe, and the nature of samsara. And only through wisdom, the development of wisdom, panya in the Pali word, can we come to realize, understand, and become awakened to the Dharma, nature. I'm not sure what that noise I can hear in the background is. It's not a, this is some kind of boat going across the sea, as you can hear, but I can hear a deep boom, 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 almost like when they are doing some bomb things in blowing up those quarries, you know. But I don't think they do that around here, so it's probably some kind of weird thunder. We've had some very strange thunder here this afternoon. So, again, nature. This thunder we're hearing now, it could be anything. It could be an earthquake. Not very long ago, only a few days ago, I heard something in Bangkok. There were tremors, earthquakes, or somewhere near there. And certainly when I was in India, in the city there, just in Bangalore, I'd be sitting on the floor like this and I could feel the building moving. And I thought, well, why is the building moving? Because there's no underground trains there or anything like that, as you were used to in London. You get a little bit sometimes. But no, it was earthquakes, I was told. And yes, quite often there's these tremors in this part of the world. But of course it doesn't take much for one of those to develop into something of a much more huge scale. I really must try and keep on the track of what I wanted to talk about this evening, which was nothing in particular. I had a couple of questions. Well, I've had quite a few questions. I always answer the questions that I get through the comments and by email, or I certainly try to. I can't necessarily give you the correct answers, but I can give you my opinion from my point of view. And when I do, I'm not wanting to open a debate. I'm just letting you know from my perspective, my point of view, and how I understand things to be. So, as much as I appreciate the correspondence, people don't need to write back and say, no, you're wrong. Well, they don't really say that, but no, it's actually this way, it's that way, because I won't get into a to and fro conversation about it. 2 reasons. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just sharing my experiences as I spend these days, these months, these years, and approaching now decades, living this monastic life in what are, to me, unusual environments, but perhaps to people whom live here, and monks whom have grown up in the Buddhist countries in this part of the world are very used to. But from an outsider's point of view, things can be a lot more visible, almost like a heightened sense of awareness. And it's similar, if you like, when we go into deep samadhi in meditation. It can be seen as going inside, introverting your awareness, attention, and escaping from reality, what is going on outside. And it is for the time that you are developing your mind through practicing samadhi, meditation, absorption, concentrating or focusing your conscious awareness on one meditation object. And whilst you're doing this, you're allowing your mind to settle and pull away from the five sensual stimulants of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching, and also the thinking mind to settle so that it can pull away, your consciousness can pull away from thinking and papancha, we call it, this overthinking, thinking one thought leading to another, to another, to another. And by doing this for some time, with regular practice, one actually, as you come out of meditation, have developed some qualities. Now, one quality we develop is a quality, a mental quality, is vipassana. Now, this is also used to describe a type of meditation, insight meditation, where one is watching a meditation object, seeing how phenomena arise, stay a while and pass away, just to sum it up very quickly, as opposed to focusing on just one meditation object and really bringing your attention and not paying any attention to anything else. It's a more widespread, taking into account, we call also mindfulness, in practical daily life. But Vipassana just means seeing clearly, and this is a quality of mind we develop through samadhi meditation. And also through the development of Vipassana, we are then able also to go into samadhi more easily. So these two types of meditation are they're all meditation. So in the Noble Eightfold Path, at the end, it's right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi, or right sati, right samadhi, right mindfulness, right meditation. Because they go together, and they cannot be one or the other. You need one for the other to work. It's like that. But when we have developed this seeing clearly, vipassana, and we also develop, as a result of development of wisdom, the understanding of the nature of all things being impermanent, unsatisfactory and out of our control, we start to develop equanimity, equanimousness, if you like, or upekkha in the Pali word. So we are less likely to react so much to what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and how we think, and look more and see more clearly. So as you see, all these lists of qualities in, say, the 7 factors of enlightenment, or the 4 bases of mindfulness, all of these characteristics all interact and weave like this together to form a holistic, clearer view of life and existence. So when one does come out of meditation, very often you have this heightened sense of awareness. So much like somebody coming from a strange environment into a fresh environment, their awareness is heightened. Now this is not only a natural human instinct because it's a protective quality, it's something, you know, you're in a strange environment, you'll open your eyes a little bit more to see, you'll listen a bit more, you'll sense everything a little bit more in a bit more detail. But as we get used to an environment, this becomes less the case. So when we're in our usual environment of home, of comfort or workplace or social activities that we've been doing for many, many years, our sense of awareness softens, becomes less sharp in terms of focus. And this is part of why we should be meditating regularly, because this really just polishes the lens and brings this sense of attention, this sense of awareness much more into focus about everything you're doing in your lives. And this, of course, not only heightens the sense of enjoyment, it can also heighten the sense of seeing the reality, the suffering of life. But if you've developed alongside this the wisdom of understanding that life, existence is suffering, then you can treat what you're seeing with some higher degree of equanimity. So rather than saying, oh no, the snake's killing the gecko, and throwing a bucket of water over the whole situation, which is a possible option to save the gecko's life, one can really see that no, these creatures that are around have been here for probably longer than human beings have existed. But just recently this forest is their environment and this is where they live, and this is how nature works. So you don't interfere. And you're able to see this more clearly. And you can also use it to understand. So it has a self-fulfilling cycle. It makes you realize again that these creatures, this gecko, may have died to save its children, or it may have just, whatever its reason, it's very possibly going to get the opportunity of rebirth into a better realm, a better existence. Maybe next time it will be the snake, or maybe next time it will be whatever. But that aside, by witnessing, by experiencing, by seeing the reality, the truth of nature, the Dharma, and by the development of wisdom about this and the development of equanimity, we can slowly start to erode, break down the fetters, the ties we have to samsara, what keeps us in the cycle of rebirth. Now, now if you're not prepared to accept the idea of rebirth, that's okay, because you will know that this is also the route, the way to break the ties to our addictions, our cravings. If we going back to this 12 links of dependent origination, which is, in summary, taking us from ignorance of not understanding to being reborn as a result of addiction, and a whole lot of steps in between. If we go back to that, towards the end there is craving. And craving is about wanting something in the future, wanting more of something, or wanting something you haven't got. not necessarily something you need. And what causes craving? What causes craving is clinging or attachment to something in the past, or something you have at the moment even. So these two steps are next to each other. You experience the taste of something, the effect of something, you like it, you enjoy it, you have a feeling arising from it, which creates all kinds of hormonal activity in your body and in your brain, to say this is good, this makes me feel good, feel happy, temporarily content. Then, having established you like it, you want more of it. And this is where craving is born. So you've clung to it, you've grasped it, you've attached to it. And then what comes next is birth into craving. Or the next, it leads into craving. And then craving leads into the birth of wanting and desire for more of this thing in the future. And then when you can't get it, there is then suffering. And suffering can be summed up in terms of our life pattern as aging, sickness and death. Because all beings will age, get sick and die. They're born to die. Now if we cling to health, if we cling to beauty, if we cling to skills, intelligence even, if we cling to quality of existence, then we will only create more suffering. But when we see the reality of their impermanence, then when the inevitable comes around, we get old, we get sick, we die, we see this more clearly, we respect it as Dharma, as nature, and we are more equanimous with this situation. So everything we see, hear, smell, taste and touch is a lesson to be learnt through experience. Not just here in the forests or the jungles, but in everyday life. Walking down a busy city street. There are lights, there are noises, there are sounds, there's the feel of the ground beneath your feet, but it all goes unnoticed on a daily basis as you commute to work or you go out with your friends. If you stop for just a moment and just take it all in, you'll see there is so much going on. Now we choose monastic life because it is the fast route to enlightenment. You can become enlightened in lay life too, but there is a lot of distraction and there's also a lot of choice for you to distract yourself away from the path of developing wholesome mind states and reducing unwholesome mind states. When you become a monk, a lot of choice is taken away from you, in fact everything. You become reliant and supported by the lay people for your food once a day, your accommodation and clothing and medicine. And we require very little else. The reason for that is so that we can just see the reality clearly of this life as it is. Now you might say that sounds a bit boring, and yes, at first it's quite difficult to get used to. But through the practice of meditation, we develop these skills of samadhi, of absorption meditation, and can get so much more benefit from that than can be gained from any sensual experiences that are available. And too, as people in lay life, you can experience through meditation just this, just that. So forgotten what I was going to say. I think I was thinking then just about, so if I look at how my mind went then, I think I'd finished what I was going to say, and then my mind jumped or went back to what I started off about to say before I distracted myself with talking about what I've seen. And you can see our minds they're not controllable. Even what you're saying is not controllable, which is why people very often just read things when they're talking or have some notes. Now, we're very much encouraged in this tradition not to have pre-prepared talks, to have notes, and I can understand why that is. I'm by no means a speaker by nature, and if I write some things down and try and stick to a pattern, then it does go rather horribly wrong. But if somebody asks me a question, blah, 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 and then I think, who's answering that question? Well, of course, it's this voice coming from this body and this thinking brain, and I can step aside sometimes and observe that and think, well, I perhaps wouldn't have thought of that answer, or maybe I would have, because it is, after all, what is purporting to be me. And here we go again. Now, with the snake and the gecko, the snake finished the gecko. How this snake is not that much bigger than the gecko, managed to consume this entire gecko. I didn't see it from completely start to finish because I had to keep a little bit away from it, and this probably took a few hours. So it managed to consume the entire thing and disappear completely, and that's now gone away with no mess and no nothing, no evidence of what has happened there. Hopefully it takes some of this and maybe spits or regurgitates some out and feeds its baby snakes, because I've seen a lot of baby snakes around, and there are a lot of baby geckos around at the moment as well. Maybe that's all of the year round, but there seem to be a lot of babies, or maybe I'm just noticing, more likely I'm just noticing more babies at the moment because I'm more aware being here in this environment with nothing other to do than meditate. So you'll find that with your own practice of meditation, if you do it, you'll get this same heightened sense of awareness, which is such a wonderful thing to experience. Things become more enjoyable, more vibrant, and more realistic. It's like when I don't know what we've got to in terms of visual technology these days, but I remember before I became a monk we had ordinary pictures on the television, or whatever it was called, and then HD came out, and I remember seeing HD pictures or television for the first time and thinking, wow. And then I got used to this, wow, that's very clear, but it just became normal. And then I went to, say, someone else's house, my mother's house or my father's house, and watched their television. I said, what's wrong with your television? It's all blurred, like someone's put Vaseline on the screen. But this was because this was what was the old kind of TV. So I showed them how they go onto the other channel and they have HD TV. And there was a huge difference. Oh, well, that's all bright, they'd say. And I'd say, yes, it's all bright and clear. And in fact, they didn't like it much. I think they went back to the soft sort of TV. But it's like that. And this is the kind of thing you get for this. This is the kind of advantage you get that's realizable and you're awakened to immediately as a result of meditation. So these things don't have to be high or lofty. It doesn't have to all just be about attaining jhanas and all of these weird and wonderful experiences. Just a bit of meditation each and every day can bring into you your life so much more clarity, so much more realistic view of the world and what's going on. And it becomes so much more enjoyable, like the HD television, as a result of that. So it's something you can try, you can experience for yourself, and know for yourself is a fact, not something you have to believe. So it isn't just about sitting and relaxing and calming the mind and chilling out. It is that too, but it has so many other wonderful side effects that maybe at first can be a little bit, everything's a bit brighter. I remember when I first was practicing meditation and I was getting quite deep into it, and then I went to one of these music festivals in the UK because I was living there at the time, and it was either Glastonbury or one of the others. There's quite a few I used to go to at that time, and wow, it was so much to take in. You know, I was a Buddhist by then. I was on the 8 precepts, so there was no alcohol or intoxicants or none of this to affect me in any way. But I was quite high as a result of all of the visual stimulus and sound that was so much more than it had been previously. I'd been to these events before. Previously, when I hadn't been meditating, and maybe I was still drinking a little bit, smoking a little bit, you know, the usual things. Softening, intoxicating the mind away from reality. This is why we have the 5th precept. Why the Buddha says, look, don't have intoxicants. Mind dulling effects. Because you're doing just that, dulling the mind. Taking it back to the old-fashioned kind of TV, not HD. So this is what must be borne in mind when one is practicing meditation. Samadhi. And samadhi is the second part of the three sections, let's say, of the Noble Eightfold Path. Yes, so we have the first section, sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, and panya, wisdom. Panya wisdom is knowing the nature of existence, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and uncontrollability, your inability to control events in your body or your mind. This is developing wisdom. This is wisdom, understanding that. Anicca, dukkha, anatta in the Pali. And then meditation is absorption, focus in one meditation object. Also mindfulness, sati, or even vipassana, seeing clearly. You develop through meditation vipassana. It's not really a type of meditation. The schools of meditation called vipassana meditation, it's a perfectly acceptable title because it is developing that, but it gets mistaken for being the nature of the meditation itself, when really it is just the quality you develop through that kind of insight meditation, as opposed to a thing in itself. And this has to be, and can only be, as a result of sila. So even if we take the 5 precepts and just say, well, of course, yes, I don't kill, I don't steal, I don't engage in sexual misconduct, and I don't lie. Without that 5th precept, well, 4.5 if you take this missing finger into account, but this 5th precept, then you're going to have a dull mind. and not go into, some people say, oh, well, a bit of alcohol helps me relax. Well, this is not what meditation is for. Not you will relax as a result of meditation, as you will also develop a heightened sense of awareness. But you don't need to be drinking beforehand, and you don't need to have too many unnecessary or any mind dulling intoxicants, because this will disable your ability to develop focus and attention on one object and absorption in samadhi. You may feel like you're going into samadhi, but you're really just going into a dozy state of awake daydreaming, as opposed to really developing that sharp focus. So our clinging that causes this rebirth into samsara is from attachment. Attachment is being attached to things in the past we remember as giving us pleasure. Similarly, as aversion is often associated with memories of things in the past that gave us suffering or caused suffering. And then clinging is to that gave us pleasure in the past, and then wanting it, craving it into the future. Forgetting through ignorance, this is the beginning of the 12 links of dependent origination, forgetting through ignorance that that pleasure was very short-lived. That momentary contentment didn't last for very long. Oh, I hope you've been able to hear me. My microphone fell down a bit. So, ignorance gives birth to attachment, giving birth to craving, giving birth to birth into aging, sickness and death. So I'm kind of going over again those 12 links of dependent origination now. It wasn't my intention, but I think it's quite good to keep going over that in your own mind with real examples. Why do you want an ice cream right now? Why do you want to open a beer? Why do you want a cigarette? It's only because in the past that gave you pleasure. And what you're remembering is the pleasure it gave you the minute you had it. What you're not remembering is the regret you had after eating it or drinking it or smoking it. If you had that, or even if you didn't have that, the nature of its very impermanent form of satisfaction. Yes, it gave you a buzz, it gave you contentment, like the first drink. Great, brilliant, I feel so much better. The second, third, fourth, fifth, not so much. The 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, really not so much. And then the next day, not feeling so good about that whole situation at all. But we soon forget that. But remember the buzz of the first, and we're back to that circle. So whether you accept or believe in rebirth, you can see how it happens there in those links of dependent origination. And through deep awareness of this and an understanding of this in meditation and the development of wisdom, equanimity, this heightened sense of awareness about our surroundings, you soon come to realize that life is so much better and freer without all of this stuff, without all of this distraction, without this choice. We think choice is freedom, but it really is not. If you've only got one option, it's so much easier than 15. If you're looking at the choice of coffee, you've got this not so great cup of coffee, but it's coffee, and you want coffee. You really enjoy it. But if you've got the choice of 3, which one should I have? You have one, and then you may immediately regret not having the other one, or not having the other one. You see? This is always the way. When there's no choice, life is so much easier. I had cause to look something up. I was speaking to someone about something, and I had cause to look something up on not on YouTube, on some other format, and so I had to put the app on this device, and well, I opened it up, and honestly, this is an app you will probably use, or people would use. And well, it didn't last long before I had to just uninstall this app, because so much choice. I thought, well, I'm not even that interested in finding what I'd been encouraged to look for. I'm sure it would have been easy to find, but it was so much distraction. And this was a BBC thing, so there was no advertising. It was pure, and that the only reason I agreed to look on there was because it was BBC, and I know I'm not going to get advertising coming at me. So I looked at this, and even so, how many radio stations do you need? How many podcasts are there? How many categories for search? What do you ever end up watching from start to how people arrive at watching these videos of mine? I cannot imagine, because of the abundance of choice. I am very grateful that you are. But considering all of the options that are available to people these days through technology and media, does anybody ever actually see anything through? I'm not sure that they do, because there wouldn't be enough time in anyone's lifetime, let alone in a day, to see all that's on offer. Now, this is an example of an overabundance of choice. And when you bring your life down, you reduce it down to what it really is, in terms of its simplicity. And the only way you can do that is really in the outside world, through sitting in meditation, giving yourself some time away from distraction, away from the vicissitudes of life, basically. But aside from that, because that's just nature and the Dharma, all of the things that are being bombarded in your direction, on the television, on the radio, on the advertising. I mean, these days, I've been to the town, the city near here. They have these big televisions which are now adverts, not just paper on boards that they used to be, and they're all flashing and changing images all of the time. I mean, how you're driving and you're looking at these things all of the time. This is a lot of bombardment. Now, to some extent, I can see why people want to just have a softer approach and view of life by maybe not having a heightened sense of awareness and becoming dull to what's going on. But is that enjoyable? I don't think so. I've been on a few trips out to various official things, and I've found it a very interesting experience to see all of these flashing lights and all the goings on. And if you've seen my older videos going through India, one had to have a degree of equanimity to travel through some very, very busy environments, noise and very vibrant atmosphere. So one isn't escaping in meditation, one isn't escaping by ordaining and becoming a monk and living in the forest. One is exposing your senses to reality and the truth, rather than hiding behind distraction, and then sharpening your awareness and your focus and developing the wisdom and equanimity to see the truth in life. And this is how we break that attachment, that clinging to the past. And therefore, that is what leads to craving. So when we see clearly that, okay, this big flashing advert says that that is the very best new phone you can have, or the new computer you can have, or the new car you can have, you're not immediately drawn to that, because you are more drawn to your past experience of not just the pleasure of getting the new phone, the new computer, or the new car, but your realization that the satisfaction, the temporary contentment that you got from that new phone, that new computer or new car was very temporary indeed. And still the insatiable craving underneath, the insatiable desire for the next best, the upgrade, the next version remained. And only by that realization does it no longer remain. And therefore that craving into the future is gone. If you remember, craving is into the future and attachment or clinging is into the past, then you realize that through meditation, quite simply, we are staying in this present moment, leaving the past in the past. It cannot be changed, and leaving the future in the future, because it's just imagination and unpredictable. And in this very present moment, here and now, there is no clinging. There is no craving. This is why they say in addiction therapy, one day at a time, or one moment at a time. And that is very appropriate. Because if you think, I've given up drinking, or I've given up smoking, and this is for the rest of my life, you're taking an experience you've enjoyed up to now and trying to say, right, I'm not going to do what I've enjoyed now for the rest of my life. It's not going to work. But if you say, for this moment, I'm just going to sit here and I'm not going to drink and I'm not going to smoke, then it's just for this moment. This moment becomes a minute, and this minute becomes an hour. Soon 3 hours has gone by, and you've for a whole morning not had a cigarette or a drink. And then a day has passed. Try starting again the next day. Another day has gone by. And then maybe 3 days has gone by, and you've not had a drink or you've not had a cigarette. If you can get through that first 3 days, not by thinking of 3 days, but in each and every moment, as you reach for the cigarette or you reach for the drink, just for this moment I won't, just for now. And let me just see how I feel about that. Then you'll be into nearly a week, then maybe 3 weeks, and once you've gone for a whole month, you've really achieved something, and you start to feel good about not doing something. You reward yourself without rewarding yourself, through unbecoming, through not trying to satisfy that craving. A month soon becomes 3 months, 6 months, and a year. These are milestones I'm talking about that really do, in hindsight, don't look forward to them, but in hindsight, give you such confidence to go on and on until you've not smoked a cigarette or had a drink for whatever, 15, 16 years in my case, no problem at all. From just deciding that I wouldn't smoke a cigarette for this moment now. And why not? Because if I want to, I have to go through the process of getting the ingredients to make the cigarette, the tobacco, the papers, then rolling it all together and then smoking it. All I have to do is sit here and not do that, and it will make very little difference just for this moment. And moment by moment, before you know it, a decade has gone by, and then 2 decades, 3 decades. But firstly it's a minute, an hour, a day, or a morning, a day, 3 days, a week, 3 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, you'll never think about it again. What have you done? You've broken the rebirth into the next cigarette, the rebirth into the next drink, the rebirth into the habit that you are trying to break, just by staying in the current moment. And how do we do that? Through meditation. It's the only way. And how do we meditate? With sila, moral virtue. No killing, stealing, no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or intoxicants. If you're addicted to intoxicants, this is the way to stop. It's a circle. One doesn't work without the other. What an incentive. And what is the result? Wisdom and a heightened sense of awareness that you've never experienced through any drug. Nothing can give you the effects that you can get through a clean system, experiencing deep states of meditation we call jhanas. Nothing can compare to that experience. Now that is a proven fact by people's experiences. People whom have tried all sorts of other means to get to such states. And now are monks who can say, no, this previous life of mine is by no means any comparison to what I experience now in jhanas. And you'll hear monks say this quite often. You'll hear meditators in lay life say this quite often. But nobody asks anybody to believe this, just to, like the Buddha said, to be experienced by the wise for themselves. This Dharma, this truth. Anyway, once again, I've not spoken at all about what I'd set out or planned to talk about. I was going to answer some questions, wasn't I? And I didn't. Maybe I'll just quickly finish on one quick question. I hope I've not gone over too much over 40 minutes, because it's very difficult to upload anything longer than that. Let's check. Oh, I have. The question will have to wait until tomorrow, because I think otherwise this will... I have saved it, they're all there on the comments, and there's plenty of them. And over the next few days I'll try and incorporate one or two into these talks. As the days go by, once I've spoken once, because I have a couple of days over the weekend when I don't record anything, so as the days go by I'll have less to say, maybe, and I'll fit some more questions and answers in. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope there's something useful in there, and if there is, please use it. And also please share with anyone else you might think could be interested in listening to this sort of thing. And try and just keep a simple life, because a simple life is just very, very enjoyable indeed. So if you've got this app with so much choice, uninstall it and just have one or two choices on your device, rather than flicking from one thing. I know it's very difficult, because we're encouraged, or you're encouraged through these. This is something I've got to talk about soon also, devices and monks, another subject that gets questioned quite often, quite rightly so, and I've got quite a bit to say about that. Yeah, keep it simple. These devices of yours are really just like an extension to your seeing, hearing, that really, and then thinking, imagination, for all of the smelling, tasting, touching, because it's not the device, it's how you use seeing, hearing, smelling. Remember, we guard our senses. We don't close off, shut ourselves away. We just monitor the door like a bouncer at a nightclub. You decide who's coming in and who's staying away. So you decide what you listen to and what you don't, and you decide what you look at and what you don't. That decision is yours. If you have too much bombardment, there's too much of a temptation sometimes to go to maybe the less wholesome of things you could be doing. But you can through a little bit of control and discipline, you can be quite disciplined with that, and you can switch all those things off or uninstall them. But that's a whole other subject, and again I've digressed, so please I will finish there before I start on again. Okay, thank you for watching. Goodbye.